Hello and welcome to this second kind of Mac guide. This time we'll be taking a look at something that's been already quite popularly requested by people, but it is good ways to play the early game. Mac has a lot of powerful stuff going on in the late game, but I've noticed a lot of people seem to be unsure what's the best way to get there, especially without losing too much in the meantime. And this is especially noteworthy because Mac currently has the lowest base starting health of any character in the game at only 200, which makes him very vulnerable to a lot of things, everything from PvE encounters to rush builds. So I'll be going through just a lot of general tips that can apply to all characters, but also some specific packages and synergies to be on the lookout for on Mac specifically. And to start us off, there's the matter, of course, of what you start with. And I think this can vary a lot from character to character. On Mac in particular, all of the starts actually have some clear advantages and disadvantages. There's income, of course, which is what I've personally chosen to go with for most of my runs, due to the fact that the extra gold just chunk that you're given gives us a lot of opportunities to try to both purchase the items that go into our later pivots, a lot of the stuff that you saw me talk about in the overview video, but at the same time, it lets us purchase kind of these tempo packages to make sure that we don't fall behind in the meantime. There's also the enchanted item start. This one does give you some resources, 6 gold, and I think it can be a bit hit or miss, but there is a lot of power in the scaling items, anything from a philosopher's stone to a firefly, where if you are scaling them and you get one of the enchants that benefit from scaling, it can still be quite powerful. And then finally, skills are pretty good on Mac because he can't get shield skills. He doesn't have any shield items. And he also, rare compared to other heroes, have a lot of very good, easily accessible bronze poison items, which means that any of burn, poison, or weapons, especially paired with the things with guaranteed crit or lifesteal, like bottle lightning, letter opener, or the obsidian shard, they're all examples of things that scale really well with the skills. So it's kind of up to your preference. Again, just for context, I chose income as my start, but I think there's merit to all of them. The first thing I'm going to go over is, I think it's a pretty commonly known concept at this point, but it is 3 on 2. It's the fact that if you gain 2 bonus experience from any source, it lets you stay 1 level ahead of kind of the baseline. And the earliest that you can hit this threshold currently is on day 2. I've highlighted the only 3 friends that Mac has because they're especially important to purchase. You can also find friends from Curio or food from chocolate or encounters like Banana Ball. But the important thing with this is that we're trying to get 1 exp from the furry friend encounter or mountain pass if you happen to see that one. And then we are trying to make sure that we're always geared up to be able to beat Rogue Scrapper as our day 2 encounter. And because it's a hard encounter, it gives us that 1 extra exp, and now we've secured level 3 on day 2 by the PvP fight. This is especially important on Mac because you don't only unlock that extra board space, but every level that passes, his inherent disadvantage of that low starting health becomes less and less prominent. So I would say that currently he might be the character where this is the most important, but this is one of those principles that you should try to go for on every character currently. Um, there's also this Midas Touch, turning lead into gold. These 3 items, the Calcinator, the Retort, and the Philosopher's Stone, all generate these chunks of lead that you can visit Mandala to turn into random items, and you receive a chunk of gold instead at the same time. Especially Calcinator and Philosopher's Stone can also be powerful pieces to play on your game board, sometimes even the retort in the mid game. But more than anything, they're Mac's main source of income, so it's very important to try to pick these up. I think a good comparison, especially for beginner players, is how Vanessa can gain extra exp and gold at the docks encounters if she has a star chart or a astrolabe, and this means that the Mandela event functions very similarly for Mac. These become your income. It doesn't matter if you're going to play them on the board or not. You want to make sure that you have them, and maybe that you upgrade one of the ones that generate a chunk a day to silver, just to make sure that you're getting a steady flow of income. And one of the reasons for this, other than just, hey, money is good, is that chocolate is king. This is extra true for a character like Mac, who doesn't have much healing. He has regen, but regen takes time to ramp, and he doesn't have any shielding innately at all. Um, Mac's main weakness is this low health, especially in the early game. You only have 200, and it's going to take a while to grow it naturally. This makes it so that you are much more vulnerable to things like Scout Trooper or Flame Juggler. It makes it so that you're much more vulnerable to aggressive boards like Weapon Vanessa. And even in the mirrors, HP can definitely be a major deciding factor. So we want to compensate for lacking health, and for example, through income start and the lead generating items, we can get a bunch of gold that we'll be able to convert into chocolates. Especially chocolates are noteworthy because flat HP is better the earlier in the game you are. If you only have 300 base health and you buy 150 HP worth of chocolates, that is a 50% increase to your health pool. That is a astronomical amount, especially that early in the game. Um, and you can also noteworthily pick up a knee brace from Curio sometimes that works similarly. But getting the HP up, the sooner the better. And always buy golden chocolates. At the end of the day, the main problem is that you only get so many chocolate encounters. If you compare a Mac that picked bronze chocolates twice to a Mac that picked gold chocolates twice, it's going to be a 200 HP difference. In the early matches, especially if you're trying to phase two aggressive builds against each other before Regen even has a shot at kicking in, 200 health is going to make all the difference, and also in some of those clutch PvE encounters. Most of the time, I would say that I try to buy gold chocolates at least 2 or 3 times throughout the run before I feel much more confident in my health pool. Then you've kind of mitigated the inherent weakness of starting more squishy. And I'm also going to highlight, as I mentioned, 3 kind of different packages that you can go for and build on Mac. And the game changes constantly. So don't treat this as kind of like fixed, you have to buy exactly these items. It's more concept using strong things that are inherent to Mac as a character that you can keep a lookout for, even in the future where some smaller details may be different from how they are now. And the first of these 3 packages is the burn one. And much like its sister package that we'll get to later, the key part of this is actually this ruby in the middle. It kind of works like pre-nerf fiery, but in item form. The fact that you gain a board-wide buff to all of your burn really incentivizes that you stack up on burn items to take full effect of this and just go all in on that strategy. And it kind of compensates so that even if some of these items are the weaker things, like a Thuribol or a Sulfur, that by themselves don't have very impressive stat lines, as long as you have enough things that say burn, it's going to be really strong. I've chosen to highlight in particular the fact that candles, that's a really strong one because most of the other burn items that you'll use, they're small ones. they can make the candle go off really quickly and generate you quick burn, which makes you win early fairly reliably. You can also use the potions like Fire Potion and Ball Lightning, especially with the Tzidian Dagger to give them more ammo in the early game. A lot of the time, you only need them to have 2 or 3 ammo because we're not going for a long, drawn out fight. We're trying to burst people early. It also has great synergy with the boiler flask if you find that later. But the general principle is to abuse the combination of having a board wide burn buff with stacking burn on your board. The sister package is Poison, and this, of course, works very similarly with Emerald instead in place of the Ruby. I would say that overall, Poison is a weaker mechanic than Burn, simply based on the fact that, it ticks at half the rate, so you need twice the Poison to equate to the Burn. And it also, sometimes leads with unfortunate timings where something that ticks twice as often is much more likely to result in a win or a tie, whereas the thing that ticks at a lower frequency, even if the damage over time is the same, the risk of you being just one tick off becomes much larger. However, the benefit of the poison package is the fact that we have the Aludel on the left here and the quills and ink on the right, which are the items that I've chosen to highlight. They're not the only important ones, but they're two of the main ones. They get multicast, and when you combine multicast with the flat buff of the emerald, or whichever skills you might have happened to pick up, it becomes very powerful, sometimes enough to mitigate the fact that burn as a mechanic is kind of not as strong as um, poison. However, I would also say that this might be a good idea to pair with regen, as it is still going to be a little bit stronger, and it can be good to have something to make sure that you can buy yourself the time that it takes for the poison to kill. Because, of course, poison, unlike burn, doesn't fall off at all. So, even if you stack it a little bit less aggressively, if you are dying more slowly, it can still balance out in the end. But as I said, the main idea is that this is a guideline. Emerald is powerful. That's what we're trying to utilize here. That's going to be true no matter which small or multicast poison items you decide to fill your board with. It's kind of a principle. And this final package is kind of the most interesting one, probably. We have the Magic Carpet in the middle, which is a, in this current patch, 6-second base cooldown item, which has its cooldown reduced by 1 every time you crit. And the letter opener, as well as the bottled lightning on the right, are both items which have guaranteed crits with fairly low cooldowns. This means that if you have something like a silver or a duplicate letter opener paired with a bottled lightning, maybe with a Tzidian dagger for ammo, it's very easy to get this carpet down to 2 or even 1 second. At silver, currently, it has 100 flat damage, and if you're hitting for 100 every second on early turns, that's pretty massive. It's kind of like if you could get an Adaladdle to come online way earlier than you usually can on Pig, who has the item normally. And this is especially impactful if you pair it with the Mortal and Pestle on the left, because now you have this very fast, high flat damage hitting weapon that has lifesteal. And this lets you again mitigate that crucial weakness of Mac, which is the fact that it's easy to get rushed because he doesn't have any type of healing. Now you've kind of DIY'd yourself into almost like a better bushel or something like that that's dealing damage at the same time as well. It makes it very hard to trade you out, and it can also be absolutely brutal at farming most PvE encounters. So as long as Carpet retains a stat line that makes it a fairly valid choice, I think this package is going to stay relevant as well, especially because the guaranteed crit items let you very powerfully double dip on any kind of skills or anything like that you have, and you can double cast the bottle lightning with the boiler flask to reduce the cooldown of the carpet even more aggressively. there's a lot of tips and tricks that you can pull with this. But more importantly, now that you've gone through these three packages, the question remains, what do you do? The final step to playing Mac in the early game is that now we start looking to pivot. You look for a direction that you can commit to as, kind of this board is starting to fall off. You don't need to um, lock yourself into playing Burn, playing Poison, or playing the crit package. It's okay to pivot out of them, but while they are carrying us through these early rounds and giving us a lot of momentum, that's when we're looking for direction. You can always look through my overview video. I go through these concepts in much more detail there, so I'll keep it relatively brief here. But for example, if you have Calcinator and you find Potion Distillery, you have a great line to get into either combo potion builds or to scale your Calcinator to be your final win condition. You can also look for the kind of trifecta, Femur, Moose, or Poppy, if you find any of those for direction and you're able to buy all of the pieces that it needs as your build is starting to taper off. You can pivot into that and play that all the way into 10 wins. And it's also very noteworthy with that. I asked some people for advice, both regarding the crit package and when to look for the VAT. And they recommended that it's a very powerful angle if you have, especially if you have the boiler flask, if you're playing one of these tempo lines and you're starting to notice it falling off, you find the VAT before you're level 7, where you get a guaranteed upgrade from it to silver, from silver to gold. You can just keep it in the stash for 2 or 3 days. You start buying all these things that you need to stack it. You start stacking it. You'll have it ready. You play it on the board. Your pivot is complete. Now you have a build that can carry you the whole way into the late game. And so this is kind of the general idea for any of those of you out there who are just feeling like, oh, I fall so far behind in the early game on Mac, or I don't know what I'm supposed to be picking up while I'm looking for direction. These are the tips and tricks that I would recommend. And with all that said, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to leave in the comments if there's anything else that you would like me to kind of show. I have a highlight as well on the channel where I uploaded a Mac game where you can see some of these things in action. It's just a VOD from my Twitch, where you can also find me live a lot of the time. And of course, as always, subscribe if you want to see more. And in the meantime, wherever you are, hope you have a great morning, day, evening, or night. And I will see you next time.